Hey, what's up you guys? So for a long time I've really been wanting to do something with our downstairs half bath. It was pretty plain and it just felt like it needed something a little more. The baseboards were incredibly thin, the walls themselves were pretty textured, and it just felt like there was something missing. So again, thinking about what we could do with this space, and I just kept coming back to board and batten. Most of the tools I had, some I didn't, but these are going to be the main ones that you're going to need if you're wanting to do something like this yourself. Definitely check the description below for everything I use to create what you're going to see at the end of the video. So I started this project like I do with all my projects, looking on Google for ideas for things that I like, and then watching a ton of YouTube videos like this one to actually teach myself how to do those things. And while I assume this is just going to be wood on a wall, it was actually quite a few decisions like, should we keep the baseboards white or paint them the same color as the paint? Should we keep the trim white around the window or should we paint it? And even things I didn't consider, like should we paint the door casing? But once we made those decisions, I started getting the bathroom ready for demo. I went ahead and removed all the fixtures and made some patches. Now one thing I knew I didn't want to do was remove the baseboards, but after what I would say is some kind of cheap ideas online that I saw when they didn't remove them, I sucked it up and made the decision to rip out the baseboards. And in the end, I did not regret doing that. And you know, during this time, this allowed me to fix something that had been bugging me since we moved in. This little piece of shoe molding here. I don't know what it was about it, just did not fit right, and I gotta say, it felt pretty good to rip that thing out. With the baseboards out, I started measuring how tall we wanted the design to go, as well as began determining the batten spacing. While this seems like you could just eyeball it, it's so much easier to use math to do this. So the math's really not that bad. You'll pick the first wall you see when you walk into the bathroom to do this on, so using the total wall width and automatically placing 2 battens on either side of the wall makes the math simple. So pick any number of battens you want, and the space between them is found by multiplying each of the battens' width times the number of battens you want to get the width of all the battens on the wall. Then you'll subtract the total wall width minus the total batten width to get the total space between. And then the space between each individual batten, you'll just divide the total space between by the number of battens you want minus 1. And here I'm just finding my studs on the wall. One thing I would do differently instead of skim coating is I would actually use a panel board to do this. But hey, I did what I did and I taught myself how to skim coat. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, it's to actually knock that texture down to get the wall completely smooth. With the skim coating finally done, I moved on to picking out the new fixtures that we were going to use, and I found some really cool industrial lights from Home Depot that I had seen online. We also found a mirror from Kohl's that was normally like $125 for about 40 bucks, which was incredible. And then from there I found it was actually cheaper to make my own boards and battens versus buying them pre-made. So I got a 4x8 sheet of MDF that was perfect from Home Depot. And I mean, I really use any excuse to go to Home Depot. And what's really cool is if you don't have a truck, Home Depot will actually cut these large sheets down into 12-inch sections for you. So while we were there, I went ahead and got a smooth cut as well as a rip guide for my saw. And what this does is helps you to cut precise cuts if you don't have a saw table. Now what wasn't fun is when I went to put my saw blade on for my miter saw, someone had basically welded the thing on and I couldn't get it off. Not even the Home Depot rep could, so this is literally me waiting for 3 hours at Home Depot. It's like the one time I really didn't enjoy being at Home Depot, but once they got that, I was able to start getting my cuts going. I've learned is that in a caulk gun there's actually a hole as well as an end poker so that you can open the caulk itself without having to use a knife or anything. And here I'm just putting liquid nails on the back before brad nailing in all of the boards into place. And any of these joints you see like this can be patched with wood putty. And if you notice, I started with the bottom and top rails or boards in the board and batten design. That makes it a lot easier to put your battens in later and cut them right to size. So I went ahead and taped up the design to see what it was going to look like and realized no matter what I did, there was going to be like an outlet or something in the way. So I ended up making a custom piece for this part here and ended up being pretty cool, I think. So I ended up with another fun cut on the opposite side of the wall with this batten landing literally right on the valve for the toilet. I busted out the hole saw to match the size, only to realize later I didn't need to do this and ended up having to pull out the jigsaw to make another more of a half moon cut, but left it in here just for fun to show you some of the problem solving that happens with some of these DIYs. And here's the wood putty so you can fill any gaps in the boards you may have. It's super easy to sand down as well. A lot of fun sanding. Definitely a lot of sanding in this project. So I went ahead and reapplied the shoe molding that I'd kept previously and then began working on flattening some of the wall surface to get ready for paint. And now the bathroom was ready for caulking. So one thing I have learned as a tip for caulking is if you draw a line on top of your caulk gun and you always keep that in sight, that's actually how you know where the caulk will go. And a tip I have for clean lines is go ahead and tape the wall, then paint it the same color as the wall before painting it the paint color that you want, and that'll help keep a clean line. Also use a taping knife for something like the bottoms where you can put that up against the wall and then paint over that. Now I gotta say, right here at the end we started having the biggest issues with paint. It was like no matter what we did, there were still like what looked like holes. So I thought, okay, I'll just patch it with some fast putty, and it was tiny little holes, but anytime you paint something black, the light shows everything. So we sanded and repainted this wall probably 3 or 4 times, and every time it just kept coming out bad and I couldn't understand what was going on. So with our bathroom looking like a middle school's chalkboard in a classroom, we went ahead and re-sanded all this, and I thought, okay, maybe if we like primer it first and then try to paint it again, maybe that'll work. So we used some of this primer that's a Kills primer made specifically for this type of project, and even that didn't work. I almost wanted to leave it white at this point because when we went back and repainted that, you'll see it's like these globs of paint just start sticking and rolling over, and so we still couldn't figure it out. We ended up going to Sherwin and getting a different primer and a different paint, only to find out it was literally the paint the entire time. Like, I didn't even know you could get bad paint, so I was really hopeful after about the 5th or 6th time of sanding at this point that it was going to work, and thankfully it did. So we started getting some of the final fixtures here, and we ended up getting these floating wood shelves. Yes, I could have built them myself, but by this point in the project, after the paint fiasco, I wasn't ready to. Now with this stud finder, this is actually interesting here. You can see that there's something flashing there, and that's not a stud. Luckily, knowing this was a bathroom as well as seeing that, I took it easy, and what you're seeing there is actually our main water piping, so I'm really happy that I didn't hit that. I'm sure by this point you guys are probably ready to see the final project, so here it is.